What is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning back in. Quick disclaimer, I worked all damn day and it is 1:45 in the morning where I'm at. Why? Well, I just might be crazy, but I also enjoy creating content, I enjoy interacting with you all, and I like to keep my promises, and I promise to help you keep up with ABK, so here we are, let's talk more ABK, and this time Jim Ryan has sat down for a little bit of an interview, if you could call it that. It was a pre-recorded conversation. So today at the Microsoft versus the FTC trial, we got to see Jim Ryan in a video interview being talked to by lawyers from opposing sides. And I guess it was a rather lengthy interview according to those who were able to watch it, though of course it was edited due to confidentiality reasons, so not the entire interview was played in its entirety. But from what those that did watch it, apparently Jim Ryan decided to bring some salt. Himalayan salt, because he's classy. So when Microsoft announced the whole ABK buyout at the beginning of 2022, they did try to reach out to PlayStation and negotiate a few things. And Jim Ryan was actually hopeful in the beginning, hoping that this was an initial salvo in his terms of Microsoft attempting to negotiate with him on what games he would have access to for the PlayStation ecosystem. But he did put it out there to the FTC lawyers and Microsoft lawyers that he has viewed that this whole ABK buyout as anti-competitive since day one. So even though Jim Ryan felt the deal was anti-competitive since day one, he wasn't as concerned about the deal in the beginning until I guess he got some kind of an email from Phil Spencer around May of 2022. And he actually referred to this email as an unmeaningful list of games that Phil Spencer stated were going to be available to the PlayStation ecosystem. And the only titles that I've been able to really hear was, I guess, Overwatch 1 was on this list, but Overwatch 2 was not. And I could kind of see why Jim Ryan was at least a little angry, because Overwatch 1 isn't even available anymore. So that would have kind of been like a little bit of a screw job there. But I guess by August 2022, as Jim Ryan stated, alarm bells were going off, and that's when he realized he had to do something to really start getting this deal, like some roadblocks, getting regulators to listen. And at least from listening to Destin Laguerre, it's kind of interesting that around that same time period, Brazil came out and approved the deal. And I think Brazil was actually one of the first ones to come out and actually approve it. So maybe that was the alarm bells, that Jim Ryan actually honestly thought that this deal had a fighting chance. And at that point, he had to start doing something. Now, going back to the beginning of January 2022, Jim Ryan did personally go talk to Bobby Kotick. And he even told Bobby Kotick that he felt the deal was anti-competitive and that he hoped regulators would do their job and block the deal. This goes back to what he told Lulu Chang at the thing in Brussels, where he said the same statement. I don't want you to have your deal. I just want to see it blocked. And I guess in talking to Bobby Kotick did tell Jim Ryan that if he did feel a certain way about the deal, that he is more than happy to oblige him with giving Jim Ryan PlayStation an extended marketing agreement just in case the deal doesn't go through. And I guess Jim Ryan passed on this extended marketing agreement, which means that the deal for Call of Duty for the marketing is only good until 2025. And for whatever reason, Jim Ryan passed on that. So it's going to be real interesting if by some chance Microsoft picks up on that marketing agreement after 2025. Now, Jim Ryan did confirm his statements about that email that came out about how he did feel Call of Duty would not be taken away from PlayStation, and that he also clarified that the deal was not exactly about exclusivity. It was also about Microsoft getting an edge in the mobile gaming market, and that was by getting a hold of King, which happens to be part of Activision Blizzard. And if you didn't know, King makes this really crack of a game called Candy Crush that a lot of people play every single day on their phones. So he understood that this was also a play for Microsoft to get into the mobile market, which is something that Phil Spencer and other executives have been saying since day one. Now, make it even more interesting, the Microsoft lawyer did ask Jim Ryan that if he felt that leaving Activision games on PlayStation would benefit Microsoft, he did say yes. But then they asked him, hey, does that mean that Microsoft should make all of Activision's games available to multiple platforms? And then he did backtrack and be like, well, I don't really think that should happen. And then they did ask him if he was in Phil Spencer's position, if Jim Ryan was in Phil Spencer's position in charge of Xbox, would he make Call of Duty and other Activision titles exclusive? And he absolutely refused to answer that question. And when they tried to press the matter, he said he doesn't have enough information on the situation and that he would not answer it. But let's all be upfront. If by some chance PlayStation was buying Activision Blizzard King, there would be games going exclusive as soon as he signed his name. The ink didn't even have to dry. He would be making games exclusive. Let's just get that over the hill on that one because, yeah, like, come on, really? Really? And then Jim Ryan decided to start going down the same path that the FTC has been trying to go down, and that is somehow that the Nintendo Switch is not part of the high-end gaming console market like PlayStation and Xbox is. And he went on to say that it is substandard hardware, it's not very superior, and that it's a very low entry price point, even though, ironically, it's the same cost as an Xbox Series S at about $300. Even though it is substandard hardware, it is pushing the boundaries for a handheld device, and there is current gen games coming out on the Nintendo Switch, which again, it's pushing the boundaries of a handheld device. And let's really talk about the fact that the Nintendo Switch has actually sold over 125 million units. So that means it is actually rivaling the PlayStation 4 and other PlayStations before it on just the install base alone. So therefore, I don't understand how even he's trying to go down the road that the Nintendo Switch is some like neutral gaming ground that is not part of any market other than the one that it created for itself. This led into the conversation on why there is so many third-party exclusives over on the PlayStation ecosystem. And Jim Ryan stated the reason being is because it makes it so much easier for a developer to produce a more quality product for a specific platform when they are able to do it exclusively for that platform, and they don't have to worry about trying to make it work on other consoles. And that it's not exactly about trying to hurt the other guy. It's about trying to make a more quality experience for the consumer. Right. And that's where it's really hard to believe Jim Ryan when he's saying that, because let's be honest here. If we were talking about the PlayStation 3 versus the Xbox 360, where the PlayStation 3 had the cell architecture and the Xbox 360 had its own architecture, and they were two completely different consoles on a technology point, I could understand that argument. But now here we are, it's 2023, and the specs between the Xbox ecosystem and the PlayStation ecosystem are so close that it's really hard to argue that it's just some monumental task for a developer to craft a game for both platforms. That's where Jim Ryan got into talking about Bethesda, because here we now go on another one. With Bethesda, he wanted to comment about how for years over time before Microsoft got a hold of Bethesda, all of their titles came out multi-platform, and that it was this great thing because nobody was cut off from any title. But now he just feels a certain way about Bethesda titles becoming exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem, like Redfall and specifically Starfield. But it's really ironic that he has those feelings, considering he tried to make Ghostwire Tokyo exclusive. He made Deathloop exclusive. Those turned out to be timed exclusives. But he also did make a big ass attempt to make Starfield exclusive, which is actually what caused Microsoft to buy Bethesda in the first place, because at that point they had had enough of PlayStation buying exclusives. And that's where Phil Spencer, in his statements, the days before Jim Ryan's interview was even shown, he came out and said that because of all these exclusive agreements that were coming out of PlayStation, it was like PlayStation was being a hostile competitor by constantly blocking them out of getting content for the Xbox ecosystem, which put them into a position where they had to purchase studios outright to prevent Sony from continuing their hostile act of running the Xbox brand into the ground. And Jim Ryan did state to the Microsoft lawyer that even though he is not happy that Starfield is an Xbox exclusive, he does not feel that it is anti-competitive, though, that Starfield is exclusive. Now we're going to get to probably one of the most controversial statements that Jim Ryan made in his interview. I wish more people would talk about it. It is kind of sliding under the radar, but in my opinion, this is why I like being an Xbox player. No, I'm not a shill, but I do understand that these corporate companies are not here to be my friend. They're here to make money. But let's just say Xbox doesn't make me feel like some monetized tool, where Jim Ryan, in his words, he loves microtransactions and monetization. He thinks that the gaming console hinges on an install base that can be monetized. It is a critical feature of the gaming console in terms of its attractiveness to the people who make games is the level of its install base, the kind of utility of the user base for people who make games to monetize against. So apparently I am some utility for developers and publishers to take advantage of and just monetize the hell out of me, because that's all I'm good for. Man, don't I feel special. Jim Ryan did also want to go on to say that Sony has put out heavy investment into more first-party studio titles, but this contradicts what was shown at the Sony State of Play, where we saw a lot, and I mean a lot, of single-player experiences being provided by third-party studios, and the vast majority of first-party studio game titles were games as a service. The only real single-player experiences that we are seeing come out of Sony PlayStation's first-party studios are titles that are geared to sell about 15 to 20 million units. They don't have time for these little low-budget games that are going to sell anywhere from 5 to 10 million. It's either a barn burner or they don't want it at all. And this aligns with Sony being reluctant to put first-party releases in PlayStation Plus until they are years old, proving that Sony is hell-bent on not only allowing consumers to have a more affordable way of experiencing their games, it's also more about sales revenue than customer affordability. And this goes down to what Jim Ryan stated about how he preferred the historic business model of charging people for games and locking them into a console, making it very difficult for them to move around from platform to platform, especially when it comes to first-party studio titles. This historic business model, according to Jim Ryan, gives Sony the ability to self-determinate by owning elements from top to bottom. And yeah, that is pretty much PlayStation as a whole. They just want you to be in their ecosystem, and they want you to be locked in, and they don't want you to ever be able to leave. They want very little flexibility. That is why you don't see a lot of titles come to PC until they're years old. You don't see a lot of titles come to any of their subscription services till they're years old. And Jim Ryan is even against the subscription service model as a whole. This is where the conversation goes into Jim Ryan wanting to talk about Game Pass. And he stated that him and other publishers that he has talked to in the industry unanimously agree that they do not like Game Pass and it is value destructive. And when Jim Ryan was asked by the Microsoft lawyer if he thought Bobby Kotick would have put Call of Duty in Game Pass if it wasn't for this deal, he responded with just saying no. Now, by him stating that kind of actually undermines the entire FTC's argument of this deal being anti-competitive, because that means that Call of Duty, if it is put in Game Pass, would be able to be more accessible to a wider audience of players for a cheaper price. And that is one of the reasons why I have a big issue with Jim Ryan talking about these historic business models and wanting to tear down Game Pass. Why? Because at the end of the day, if I can be blunt, I don't give a crap if these executives don't get their multi-million-dollar bonuses every single effing year. I worry about the money in my pocket and the fact that Game Pass, even though it did have a $2 price raise for me, is still one of the best damn values in gaming. Because why? They are allowing me to consume more gaming at a cheaper price, and I don't feel like I'm being nickeled and dimed to death like I would be over at the PlayStation ecosystem. Now, Jim Ryan did try to play a little bit of the victim card in all this, and that's where it gets funny, where he did point out that for 3 months in 2021, Microsoft outsold the PS5 with the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, so they can compete with Sony just fine if they wanted to. And that was because he stated that certain titles just happen to sell better in the United States. And these titles normally reflect around two genres, multiplayer online and shooters, because for some reason over here in the United States, we are just big consumers of multiplayer shooters. And I don't really know if that was like a dig at the United States or a dig at Xbox, but I don't know what he was trying to get at there, but for whatever reason, he was just trying to point out that Microsoft has the ability to compete based on the fact that we like to play online and shoot at stuff. I don't get what he was trying to say. Jim Ryan also did try to once again help the FTC's arguments. It's really weird. It's like the FTC, Jim Ryan, and the other people on that side of the table seem to be sharing notes, because he wanted to cap off with saying that he really feels that cloud gaming is going to be a big deal, especially from 2025 to 2035. Cloud gaming would give a more meaningful way for consumers to access games. But that's also very interesting because literally a while back, a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, he did say that cloud gaming is just in its infancy and that it has a large uphill battle currently to become a very viable product. And I'm just very curious on what he thinks is going to happen with cloud gaming in the next year and a half, to where I guess in 2025 it's going to explode. So whatever that is for. But yeah, apparently Jim Ryan is also trying to hammer home that cloud gaming is much more important than other analysts are trying to say that it is. Now, one last thing I do want to point out, because this was also touched on by the Microsoft lawyer, that there is obviously a big seed of discontent between PlayStation and Xbox at this point. They are not going to ever have any kind of cooperation unless it is absolutely forced, kind of like how that crossplay thing went down back in the day, where like PlayStation was the last holdout on crossplay until finally consumers were able to convince them to do this, because it was pro-consumer and PlayStation was holding on to some grudge. And it appears that grudge is very strong currently, because PlayStation is coming off very untrusting when it comes to discussion about the dev kits for the PlayStation 6. It's interesting that they're already talking about the PlayStation 6. And Jim Ryan wanted to clarify that if by some chance Microsoft does get Activision, they would withhold PlayStation 6 dev kits from Activision, making it extremely difficult for those developers to be able to craft a product for the PlayStation 6. And we even saw PlayStation do this with the PlayStation 5 dev kits when it came to trying to craft a better experience for Minecraft. Because like the Minecraft developer did not have access to the PlayStation 5 dev kit until the PlayStation 5 was released. And then they were able to start really optimizing and crafting a game for the PS5. Now, I don't blame PlayStation for doing this. I understand they want to keep their technology close. They want to hold their cards close to their chest. But don't go out and tell the FTC that Microsoft is going to deliberately develop an inferior product and devalue the Call of Duty franchise by putting out substandard games if you're going to withhold your dev kit, creating that situation. So if by some chance that situation occurs, you're the one that shot yourself in the foot. So there we have it. That was this round of what was going down in the FTC case versus Microsoft. Again, I wanted to try to keep this as short as possible, but what was interesting is a lot was shared actually today. There was also some other stuff with one of the economists that the FTC used. I'm hoping to put that out in a different video. And to keep up with all the ABK news that's coming out, all the gaming news that happens, please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Also, please check out the end card on this video, explore my channel, look at my latest video. And I always end off with telling everybody, don't let the console wars affect you. You be sure to play the games that you love on the platform you prefer, no matter what anybody says. I am Centurion1307, and thank you for watching.